It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable. It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable. It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable. It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable. It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and makes sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts and make sure that our arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts arenas are financially sustainable.
It's awful.
It will help manage scheduling with fairness, ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces conflicts
readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces costs. Readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces costs. Readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces costs. Readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces costs. Readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces costs. Readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally and responsibly, and reduces costs. Readiness are financially sustainable. It's also regular health management scheduling with fairness. Please ensure ice is used optimally.
I'm on page 6, slide 6. And it's not just hockey. Selwyn rinks serve thousands of participants across many groups, as this slide shows. There are approximately over 1,700 users across minor hockey, junior teams, adult leagues, figure skating, and other youth sports, with no additional ice times for any possible new users. Demand is outpacing supply, making scheduling a real puzzle for not only our own ice schedulers, but for your own recreation staff. Some of the organizations listed here also have wait lists. The EMHA has a wait list. The Ennismore Girls Hockey Association has a wait list. Ennismore Optimist skating programs have wait lists. Men's Sunday Night League has wait list. And the Lakefield Ladies Hockey Association also has a long wait list. Slide 7. Here's where things get frustrating. We have kids as young as 12 playing at 10 p.m., while adult leagues start at 7 p.m. during weeknights in Selwyn. Families are forced to travel to other towns for ice time, adding cost and inconvenience. We have 11 and 12-year-olds on ice until 9:30 p.m. in Warsaw, or on ice until 8:30 p.m. in Apsley. Then they have to drive home after. We have 13 and 14-year-olds practicing from 9 to 10 p.m. in Warsaw. We have 14 and 15-year-olds practicing from 9:30 to 10:30 in Warsaw, or 10 to 11 in Ennismore. And the Ennismore Girls Association also uses the Omemee Arena. The Selwyn Recreation Services Plan claims ice sports are declining, but the data says otherwise. As shown on the chart on this page, participation in hockey is growing in Ontario, both in boys and girls. And Selwyn's registration numbers reflect this trend. Slide 8. Selwyn families are paying extra to play the game that they love. The Ennismore Hockey Association and the Ennismore Girls Hockey Association pay higher non-resident fees to play in other municipalities. 8% of the Ennismore Hockey Association's rental budget goes to towns outside of Selwyn. Players travel to several towns just to get enough practice and games times. While Ennismore does its best to avoid this, we sometimes have to host home games in out-of-town arenas. This makes it hard to fill the barn, as the hockey saying goes, to cheer on our own home teams. Slide 9. Most of the places we travel to already have ice allocation policies in place. We've listed the areas in this chart that Ennismore, both boys and girls hockey players must travel to due to OMHA, OWHA boundaries. Every city and small town that we travel to already has an ice allocation policy in place. Slide 10. Just down the road, Peterborough has a clear, fair policy, and it appears to be working. Peterborough prioritizes youth organizations in a very structured way. The ice is allocated based on need, not just first come, first serve basis, and this appears to be working for everyone involved. It's a transparent system that benefits all users. Slide 11. The solution is simple. Let's implement what's already been recommended. Officially adopt an ice allocation policy before scheduling of our 2025-2026 season. Make sure that fairness and transparency guide the decision-making. Slide 12. An ice allocation policy helps everyone, youth players, adult leagues, and the township itself. It gives kids appropriate practice times. It ensures fairness for all user groups. It helps manage arenas efficiently while keeping local players local. We want to be very clear. We are not trying to take a single ice time from any current user group. We are simply asking for a clear, defined ice allocation policy to help meet the needs of each user group in Selwyn Township. We find ourselves trying to find appropriate ice times for kids within our organizations, and we believe that an ice allocation policy will help with that. Slide 13. We know that Selwyn has a draft policy that they presented in 2022. We also worked up a draft policy based on the City of Peterborough's policy, and we can send that to staff if they'd like. The Peterborough policy and the one already drafted by Selwyn is very similar in nature. We welcome discussions and collaborations with all other user groups to make this work for everyone. Thank you for your time, and both myself and Paula, the Vice President of EMHA, are here to answer any questions that you may have of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I have a question for you before I pass it on to council. Are the other user groups aware that you have brought this forward? Has there been discussion?
Yes.
Are they in agreement with what you are presenting?
I believe we talked to every single user group.
The only one that didn't get back to us was the figure skating club. We didn't hear back from them, but we have the girls in here. We have spoken to the men's league and expressed to them that it's not about.
You should go to the mic.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We have spoken to the men's league and they were worried about losing ice time. And we have stated it's not about the men's league losing ice time. It's maybe just shifting times where, you know, Ennismore does or any of the youth programs don't go in on the ice, off the ice at 7 o'clock and watch the men's league come at 7. And then we go back at 10 p.m. to use the ice. So we were just looking at shifting them to go to 8, 9, 10 instead of using that 5 and 6, that 6, 7 to 8 time slot. So yes, they are well aware that we are here today and we've asked them to come if they wanted to come to participate.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to council for any questions. Yes, John.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor Senes. And thank you very much for your presentation. I play hockey at the Lakefield Arena twice a week, so I'm there a lot. Also with my granddaughter who plays for the Ennismore Eagles, and she has more games in Lakefield than she does in Ennismore, despite the fact she's an Ennismore Eagle. I guess my question goes through you to Mike. Could you remind council, I mean, we've all read your report, but could you remind council of what is the process through which ice time is allocated now?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I hope it doesn't matter what arena they play since we're all one township. But on the to speak to one other thing first before answering your question. Something like shifting the time on a Wednesday was proposed after the last time we went through this in 2022 when we were asked to meet with all the groups. It was declined because we didn't have anything that it was through negotiation. Sorry, to remind me exactly of your question. Sorry, John.
Just how is ice allocated now?
Okay, so right now it's done strictly through legacy. So if somebody has a time, they get that time until they no longer need it. So if they didn't have the numbers or didn't have an interest in it or fully folded, we've had that happen. Sunday morning would be an example. There used to be a men's league that played an hour on Sunday. They just didn't have enough bodies and didn't have enough bodies and they gave back their time. So it went to youth sports first and foremost, because they are the biggest user and they have the biggest numbers. So it's fully legacy and then negotiating. If somebody doesn't want to give up their time that they've had established, then we don't have a stick to negotiate with. We have a lot of carrots.
Yes, so John, before you carry on, with the idea is to ask questions of the delegation, and then we are going to hear from Mike on, who does have a report, so. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I was involved in hockey when my kids were younger, PGHA Nationals, Innismore. My son played in Innismore as well. So ice has always been a challenge, and this is going back quite a few years ago. My girls' team from PGHA had to practice in the Havelock because there was no ice time in Peterborough even. So ice time has always been an issue, of course. But as an adult, I've never played before 9 o'clock in any arena, than leagues that I played in over the years. And I know it's legacy, as Mike has said, at a time when nobody wanted 10 o'clock on Wednesday night or whatever it is, then that's why it started at 7. But if there's people that need 10 o'clock now, then maybe there should be some adjustment there. So the kids should come first. They've got to go to school the next day. So I think we have to look at that as an option. So I have a question for Mike, actually, and it's not, are there any outside users using prime time that aren't part of any of the minor sports or the men's, ladies leagues outside of that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are no regular rentals from anybody outside of the township. We don't know where the athletes come from,
Right.
but the associations and the
They're all
rental
local.
groups are not.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, so, yes, Councillor Colas.
Through you, thanks. When I was doing my campaign, I talked with a few of the different presidents about the ice allocation, especially for minor, and they were telling me the amounts of money that they were spending externally, and you haven't done that today. Do you have those numbers in front of you?
Yeah, sorry, I did speak to that. 8% of our budget is spent on arenas outside of Selwyn Township for our youth players.
But do you have a solid number on that?
I think
Like
the number,
across the different leagues?
I think it was 240,000 that
Yeah.
we paid the township.
Yeah.
On like Selwyn Township for ice for the year. So then 8% on top of that is what our external.
I-
Yeah.
I think it was somewhere in around $20,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of inflation. I know that's going to increase and stuff. So I'm just curious if how high the numbers actually jumped.
So to rent ice, like when we're looking at renting ice outside of the township, even to go to Apsley, it's $300 an hour now to rent. A lot of townships have increased if you're coming from out of their township. So when we go to rent somewhere outside of Selwyn, we don't just pay the ice fee, you also pay a premium because you're not from the town. Like we had to rent ice in Peterborough this year to do spring tryouts, and we have an extra premium to it because we are outside residents of Peterborough. So, yeah.
I think that would be really helpful if you could provide us that information.
I can get that from the treasurer. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. And I know it's just you're just speaking for your club, but if you could get the other youth involved, that it would just help us to compare.
Yeah, we can
notes.
get the, Yeah,
Oh, you
we
do?
have the same
Okay.
treasurer.
Yeah.
So, yes, we can get the girls' organization for sure.
Sure, and I just wanted to make one comment. I know, like, I got 3 kids. It's all about the kids. But I think you do need to carve out time for adults because I need my mental space too. And if I have to make dinner at 5 and I can play at 7 and then be home to tuck them in, I would prefer that too. So it is a gentle balance to consider, but I mean, who's going to raise them if we're not around, right? So.
So I just want to sort of a personal anecdote on this. On Monday nights, my 13-year-old gets dropped off at the arena at 10 p.m. And I have to have slept in my car from 10 to 11 p.m. to wait for him to come off. My husband stays home with our other 2 children because they're younger. And then they roll out of the arena at 11:15. And when he gets home, being a 13-year-old, he has his bowl of cereal and then takes some time and it's midnight before my 13-year-old is in bed. So I can understand having multiple children and priorities and whatnot. But when a men's league goes on from 9 to 10, and then I have to drop my 13-year-old off from 10 to 11. All we're asking is in those situations, perhaps a simple swap of hours. We're not saying don't take away that ice time from men's. We're just saying literally give the 13-year-olds an earlier ice time and everybody gets to keep their ice time. Recreation sport. I'm a part of the Ladies Lakefield Hockey Association. I'm not going to give up my time. It's my 1 hour a week that I get to also go play hockey and not spend it with my kids. So these are the things that we're talking about is simple 1 hour swaps.
Can I say something too? I'm in a different boat. My child's U18, 10 p.m. It's not as big of an issue as the U13. However, when my son is getting off the ice at 11:15, most of the men's league are still in the change room and they don't leave till closing time. So it's not like they don't want to stay out later. It's not time that they have to get home and get to bed. They are literally hanging out there and we're walking out of the arena at the same time. So I don't think in some instances, yes, some men, they want to get home right away. It's a social thing. So they like to sit around and hang out, which is great. I think it's great for their mental state. And I think everybody deserves to have that outlet, but it would be nice to be able to, have the younger kids maybe have that 7 to 8 time slot instead of 10 to 11.
Thank you.
I'll leave it. Yeah. I'll ask a question of Mike to follow up.
Okay. Okay, Mike.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor, I believe I heard Councillor say that they've all read the report, that all of you guys have read the report, so I won't bore you with a lot of it, but the highlights are definitely going to be that the facility time allocation policy, which was developed originally started after the 2020 service delivery review by Monteith Brown. And I had just come from Stouffville a few years before that, and we had just done an ice allocation policy. We chose to do a facility allocation policy because it then covers sports fields and other sporting facilities, indoor or out, which made a lot of sense. We still had the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, so by the time the full policy was done, it had been reviewed with them, and we had a chance to really meet with all the user groups. There was some informal through the various reviews and some very formal discussions, open houses, which led us to the report that was referred to and is still available online. The choices that we put in front of council eventually with the choice number 3 or option number 3 being chosen to defer consideration did result in some wins. They were referred to by both Paula and Holly that Wednesday we met with them and and that one wasn't as much of a win, but it did result in some conversations and some very honest exchanges. We did get a bit of a win with the ladies in Lakefield the Sunday night by moving them into a more consolidated block and back an hour. They have no interest in playing till 11 o'clock, which is when prime time ends. And then on Monday, we did gain an hour for minor sports at that time. But those were the few opportunities for us to make tweaks because it was all negotiation and ultimately based on legacy. Certainly knowing the industry and knowing the Kawartha Lakes area and all the arenas, we are fortunate to have adult leagues that play on a Sunday night because as all of these hockey parents know, Sunday does get turned back, especially the late evening if they're away at a tournament or they're in playoffs or things like that. It's not Sunday at 9 o'clock isn't, it's called prime time, but it isn't as prime time as Wednesday at 7. And in history, I know that it does get turned back. So the fact that we're lucky enough in Selwyn to have from 7 till 11 filled every Sunday at one arena, and we're trying to work with the ladies group more and more to get them to take the later slots. I would love to have the men on at 10 o'clock. Wednesday weren't interested in it, and then they said because then it's too much of a change and people are going to get the times wrong and not, even though we had recommended maybe rotating. So you have 8 this week, next week you have 9, then you have 10. And because they only play there half the time, and they do turn back almost 50% of their ice to minor sports, because they have home games and away games. So it's not like the community's not working, which is why I think both of the presenters spoke to, not taking away from, working together. Where we are right now, we still have the exact conversations every year. This year there was a Sunday time that became available because of declining numbers in that group. We have been able to work with the Chiefs and trying to get them to practice late on Sundays, and that happens every year. So right now that is where we are, and until something changes through the will of council, we will continue to do that every year and try and make sure that we're not taking away from the groups as they said, but that we are doing the best we can for the existing number and the potential growing number that is being forecast.
Okay, thank you. I think it's not so much losing ice time, it's losing the time on the ice. Two different things, two totally separate things. So are there any questions for Mike? Councillor Koulis.
Through you. I mean, I think the elephant in the room is that we need more ice and we know we can't build an ice rink. So we're in the situation of having to have this discussion. But my follow-up question to Mike is, now that we have the new arena complex in Peterborough, is that going to help in any way with this ice allocation discussion? Because my understanding is that it was actually just replacing the North Crest Arena. So I don't know if it's actually going to help.
Through you, Madam Mayor, due to several of the facts that they pointed out, we are in a bit of a catch-22 here where we are. We don't have outside users. We don't charge them $300 an hour because we don't have them. We don't have ice to give them. We need to buy ice elsewhere. So they may. I don't think that the numbers bear out that there's going to be a whole bunch of new hours available in prime time. But if they are, they're going to cost them $300 an hour, 50%, 50% more, maybe even higher, given that there's a youth rate here. So it may take a little bit of the edge off of timing, but I don't think it's going to take a lot of the pressure off in both ways, cost wise and the time that it takes to travel there, because it's still, it's not quite like traveling from your house in Young's Point over to the arena. You're 45-minute extra on top of the time you have to be there in advance. So yeah, I don't think that Miskin is going to make that much of a difference since we lost North Crest and since the population has grown since they first talked about it taking some of the pressure off.
Councillor Boyko.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mike. As I read your report, I found it interesting that in 2020, it was recommended by the consultant that the township formalize an ice allocation policy. And in 2021, we looked at an ice allocation policy, but it was determined, as you said, and as it says in the report, that we'll defer this for one more season. And then in 2022, that we said again that we will defer this for one more season while we come up with the idea for an ice allocation part. Well, maybe the time has come to stop kicking it down the road. I think that we've heard a tremendous presentation and saying that there is an issue here that needs to be resolved, and maybe simply going by the legacy way that we have been allocating ice isn't working to the best of for all. And so maybe a motion might be that the manager of recreational services meet with the user groups to do as was suggested by our 2024 recreational service plan and develop an ice allocation policy. And I would move that. Would you like me to?
Council for recommend, for.
Yeah. Would you like me to read it again, or is that, have you got it? That the manager of recreational services meet with user groups to do as was suggested by our 2024 recreational service plan and to develop an ice allocation policy, which would go through the regular process of coming back.
Come back to council.
That's right.
For endorsement or no.
That's right.
Okay, is there someone willing to second it? Okay. See no seconder, so Councillor Colas.
Through you. So two clarification questions here. Is it like one or two groups that would have to move around, or is there more than one group who would have to make the accommodations to, if we're putting
well,
youth first?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll go through a couple of the numbers just because I think that helps.
Yeah. Thanks.
There's 60 hours that are called prime time. It's 8 o'clock till 11 o'clock on Saturday, Sunday, and it's 5 o'clock till 11 o'clock on the rest of the weekdays. Right now in Ennismore, 51 of those hours are being used by minor sports. There's 4 on Sunday, 3 on Wednesday, 1 on Monday, and 1 on Thursday. The Thursday would be the latest of them. No, I guess they're the same as the Monday. So they're 9, 10, 9, 10, and then 7 till 10 on Wednesday. So there are gaps, which does mean that there's 3 10 o'clock times where kids are definitely going on after. In Lakefield, depending on how you classify junior C, I classify them as minor sport. And I think most of our reports have. You're at 54.5 hours are available and largely used because we don't have some of the 10 o'clock times being taken by minor sports. So you're at 91%. So we're not talking about a lot of hours, and the associations have been really good at working with the 7 o'clock AM and with 4 o'clock when it's available. So they are stretching beyond the prime time hours. So that is what's available in prime time, but like really to be able to give the associations the game time and practice time at a minimum that they would like, because none of the 3 associations have that right now. The best percentage per team right now is actually the girls at the GHA, and it's only slightly higher than the LDMHA, but because the EMHA has such high numbers, it's hard to get them at 2 hours per week. None of the associations have 2 hours a week, and that would be the ideal minimum for those that play a 90-minute game. They would, in a perfect world, they'd be at least 2.5 hours per week, but we don't have that. We physically do not have that many primetime hours available.
Can I ask one follow-up? Through you. I just want to clarify too, that the policy that was brought forward, is it outdated? Like, do we need to review it before it comes back to council?
through
Okay.
you, Madam Mayor, I don't think it's outdated, but I think in light of some of the things that I've heard tonight of not wanting to take, because let's be frank, the Peterborough one was scorched earth. And nothing, not there's anything wrong with that, but they started zero-based budgeting. Nothing's on the table. Kids go first. And the senior teams and the ladies teams, we gained the ladies league through that. We had some time available on Sunday. People decided to move around. The Chiefs went a little bit later and we were able to carve out a 4-hour block for them. They literally started from ground zero. That's the way they did it. I don't think that's what's being suggested here at all. So ours wasn't quite that cut and dry, but it definitely says that it's minor sports first. So if an association decides that they don't want to work or play nicely in the sandbox, the way it's written right now, they could say, no, sorry, we're taking all of the 3 hours on Wednesday night. Probably lose some coaches, unfortunately, and a couple sponsors. No, but this is with you guys here right now. And if it says that in black and white, so then I think we can all point to examples where people would possibly do it.
Yeah.
Thank you for the context.
Yes.
Thank you, through you. Mike, just with some of the dates that we're discussing here, it's predominantly at the beginning of COVID and halfway through it. Did that have impacts on the thinking of allocation at the time at all? Were there considerations?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it had something to do with processing through or going through the process of making this an actual policy, because everything was kind of up in the air and we were more worried about cohorts and exiting directions and staying clear and being so that certainly put some of this on pause, but I don't think it had much to do with wanting it or with it not happening. I think it really had more to do with it. Okay, we're a little too preoccupied right now, so it's not going to be pushed through, because as Councillor Boyko said, it's come through where, okay, for next year, we're going to negotiate. Let's put it on pause. Okay, let's negotiate. And I think that it had more of an effect on the process than it did on the outcomes.
Thank you. Follow up. Councillor Boyko, could you put forward a motion? Could you say it again to me, or can township staff let me know again?
Sorry, I can read it again. Yeah, the purpose of the motion is not to say that the ice allocation policy that we develop will be scorched earth like Peterborough. It's not to say our policy will be minor hockey gets whatever it wants. All it's going to do is say, here are the rules, here's the procedures, here's the policy, here's how we are going to allocate ice, rather than putting our manager of recreation service every year having to negotiate based on what happened before. Here are the principles upon which we will allocate the ice. I think that's the purpose of every ice allocation policy. And we see from the presentation that it lists in almost every township we look at around us. So my motion was the manager of recreational services meet with user groups to do as was suggested by our 2024 recreational service plan and develop an ice allocation policy.
That would come back to council.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could put that in the motion, but that's the process.
That would be part of the motion.
Okay. That will come back to council for consideration. And again, it just means that you're going to discuss with the various user groups, here's what we're thinking about. What would you think should be in this ice allocation policy?
Thank you. I would second that.
Pardon?
Process, procedure that's been.
Yeah, no, there wasn't.
We're still discussing.
There was no seconder.
We had questions, questions too, that's why I was waiting for a seconder as well.
Yep, so he seconded now. Yeah. Deputy Mayor
Thank
Black.
you, through Mayor. Yeah, no, I was prepared to second it, but I was waiting for opportunity to ask questions before, and
Okay.
so I think that's a great process, because we can't the historical users of those times should have some say as well. Because again, they've been there when the arena wasn't full and the ice time wasn't being used, and part of this, for a lot of, places is the growth of girls hockey. The PGHA, the Keene and the Ennismore, groups started up because PGHA didn't have enough ice time to create enough teams at different levels when girls hockey started. I was there at that time. So I think the policy has to change. It doesn't need to be scorched earth. I don't agree with that. But there's certainly, I mean, I think you identified about 4 different situations that if we could solve those, people would be happy moving forward, and maybe it needs to be adjusted again down the road, but short term, long term, it sounds like there's about 4 issues, ice time wise, that can be dealt with, and I think that could be dealt with through an allocation policy. But again, all members involved, discussing, and maybe it's smaller moves than bigger moves, scorched earth compared to some kind of understanding amongst the groups that we need to move forward on allocating more time for youth. So I support the motion. I just want to make that clear that I'm not advocating for a scorched earth approach to it. I'm approach more of the groups getting together and trying to have a little bit of flexibility and agreement on how we can move forward. And maybe that's every couple of years it's reviewed again, sort of thing.
So, okay, Mike. Sure.
Sorry, through you, just a follow up. I thought that's what was happening already. Like, are we not
Yeah.
already doing that?
He's
We're just not doing it under a policy.
Right. And
That's right.
So-
sorry, if I-
So how is this going to change anything? The way that you're putting it forward?
Mike.
Through you, Madam Mayor. If the conversations all take place and there is something that comes out of that has us make a change to the existing ice policy, then it could change. I think that's where the suggestion is that the conversation still happens not to make the schedule, but to tweak the ice allocation policy, and then we'll get there. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
If I could respond, because the question was about the motion. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the purpose of the motion. It's not that Mike's going to sit down here and negotiate where everybody's ice time is. That's what's done every year. This is going to be sitting down to say, we're going to have a policy that is the ice allocation policy that will state, here's the assumptions that we go by every year when we negotiate ice. Here are the principles that we adhere to. Here's the process that we adhere to. Because right now, it's just these conversations that happen. So I don't think there is anything wrong. And I think there's a great benefit to saying, here are our assumptions, here are our principles, here are our processes for making these decisions. That's what the ice allocation policy is all about. I think if anything, it will protect the minor hockey associations and others, and it will protect Mike or whoever is doing that job 10 years from now to say, no, here is why we are making these decisions and here how we make them.
Mike, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just want to make sure one thing, I know it might be a little nitpicky, but we have been calling it the facility time allocation policy. And I think there is some value in that. I was certainly a proponent 5 years ago of calling a nice allocation policy, but there are crossovers into field sports and potentially into hall rentals if ballroom dancing becomes the next big thing, or pickleball moves indoor, we need to know how to.
Yeah, you never know. Deputy Mayor Black.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think Councillor Koulis is right. Most of that is happening, but it's, as Councillor Boyko say, it's something as simple as saying no ice time after 10 o'clock for anybody U15 or lower, or no men's leagues before 8 o'clock. Things like that give you basic principles of allocation of when the ice should come, and then you deal with the particular situations that work into the thing. So I think those are kind of some basic understanding of that. We don't want 13-year-olds on the ice at 10 o'clock at night. That's not appropriate. So I think it's sitting down with those groups and coming up with those rules around how you're going to allocate the ice, I think is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, so my one concern is that we have a couple of groups that are here that are wanting to go in this direction, and I don't know about the other groups. And I have some concern with that because I was here last time around, and I can tell you that the senior men's were very vocal and were adamant about keeping their time. So there's going to be winners and losers with this. As long as council's prepared to get the phone calls and the emails, because they will come. If that's the direction you want to go, you know, my late husband used to play hockey. He was in Old Timers in Pickering. And his ice time started at 11. And every night he came home and he'd play hockey for the rest of the night beside me in bed. We finally got ultramatic beds that were separate so he could continue playing hockey and I could get some sleep. The other thing is my brothers, I grew up in Scarborough, and my brothers, my dad would have to take them for practice at 4 a.m. in Scarborough. That's the only time they could get for ice. So you guys have it really lucky for, you know, or easy for the way it is now with the prime time ice, because those kind of things didn't exist back in the day. And when you're from a bigger municipality, you take what you get. So just wanted to make that comment.
Could respond
Want to
partially?
interrupt the chair?
No, I
Mr.
just
Boyko?
so I thought you were done. I apologize.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So I'm just feeling a bit cautious about doing this right now, where the other user groups might not necessarily be aware. And like I say, be prepared for the aftermath because it will come. Councillor Boyko.
Okay, and I apologize. I thought you were done. Yeah, when I was a little kid growing up in Peterborough, my ice practice time was 6 o'clock in the morning in Keene. So I understand totally. Just to respond, this is not coming just as a response to the presentation that was made before us today. And that's why I referred to council in 2020 endorsing that we should have a plan, and in 2021 endorsing that we should have a plan next year, and then in 2024 saying we should have a plan next year. Basically, we are doing what we have been talking about since 2020. We're responding to that as much as we're responding to the presentation. So thank you.
And my final caveat on this is, in this agenda today, we have 3 different recommendations that are going to be going to Parks and Rec. And as we continue down this road, the work plans are in place. These are new, and something is going to have to come off the table to accommodate with the extra work that we are now posing to that particular department. Councillor Koulis.
Through you, I just want to make with the motion, I think it actually should be changed. The focus is on that it should be impartial and equal, and I don't think this should be placed just on Mike's shoulders. I think it should say staff. So I would request that change be made, because it also may, being a facility policy, reach beyond Mike at some point.
So, if I could,
So
so I
friendly
understand the
amendment?
friendly amendment just says, instead of manager of recreation services, says staff meet with.
Yes.
That-
And I
that-
think that actually aligns with procedure properly.
I accept that friendly amendment.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And the seconder, do you accept? Okay. All right. There's nothing more to say. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you. All right, question period. Madam Clerk, did we get any questions come forward?
No questions.
Thank you. We will now move on to Mr. Vance, our Manager of Financial Services.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the report before council is on the asset management plan. So with the taxation budget now approved, and we're moving along into audit and water and sewer budgets, wanted to just remind council of our requirements for the asset management plan for this year. And so the report Ideally, it's just an information report, but we are requesting a special meeting the week of June the 17th to actually review the draft asset management plan that should be together at that point in time. So I'll just leave it there and answer any questions council may have.
Any questions for Elaine? Someone move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Pulis, seconded by Councillor Henry, all in favor. That's carried. Thank you very much. Anything from consent? Councillor Boyko.
I have two things that I would like to pull from consent. First is correspondence 6-1 with respect to Orca. And the next is 8B. I have a question regarding the OPP minutes, 8.1.
All right, let's pass the balance of it. And so can I have someone move and second the Deputy Mayor Black and Councillor Henry, all in favor, carried. All right, we'll go first to 6-1. Councillor Boyko.
6-1 is in regard to the Lakefield Campground. And it says in the report that the township received a letter from the Autonomy Conservation Authority, Orca, on March 3rd, saying that the Lakefield Campground operating agreement notice to terminate. And it also said that there were communications with our staff in December. And I would like to ask, the communications that were made with our staff in December, was that a letter or a phone call?
Janice.
Sure, those communications were with me, and it was actually at the end of November. And it was a phone call from Jeanette with regard to some conversations the Orca board had in closed session. And then the follow-up conversation was about 2 weeks after that, we were able to connect. We had, I went away from that conversation and said, I will think through the request. And I did so. We were busy with some other meetings. Jeanette and I had some phone tag, and eventually I think it was about mid-December when we got talking again.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Follow-up. Could you tell us then, what was the nature of the conversation? What message did Orca give the township in December, November?
The message was that wondering whether or not the township would be prepared to discuss the revenue sharing in the agreement. And the response was that after having reviewed the direction that we were given from council when the decision was made, the way that the agreement was negotiated, my response was that I would not recommend that. And quite frankly, the fact that we had just gone through a process of approving a significant capital project, which was part of the rationale for how the revenue sharing was originally established. My response was that if that request came forward to council formally, I would not be recommending that we do that at this point in time.
Okay, my third and final question. I'm still trying to understand, I guess, how decisions are made by staff to decide that a certain issue is an administrative decision, while other decisions rise to the level of a policy decision that needs to come to council. And so maybe you could tell me about the factors that go into that in answering the question, why, when Orca told our township that we could be threatened with the notice of termination, but there is an opportunity to at least renegotiate the contract, why was council not brought in at that point for that discussion?
So as I mentioned, the conversation was around some conversations that the board had in closed session.
Mhm.
That certainly, we wouldn't have those discussions at closed session in council. The second conversation, certainly my understanding was that the CAO of Orca was going to go back and speak with the board based on the fact that I had said I would not recommend that to council at this point in time.
You would not recommend renegotiating the
Yes.
contract?
Yeah.
Okay, if through you, Madam Chair, again, I'm trying to understand. So you would not recommend to council that council considers a renegotiation of the contract? Why would that not be council's decision as to whether council wished to renegotiate the contract? Again, I'm trying to understand the process.
I would say it would be if we got a formal request that I could deal with in open session.
Okay. I'm still confused, but okay.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Thanks, Jeanette, for that explanation there. What's in camera, what's not in camera. So,
Janice,
oh, sorry, who did I say?
you said Jeanette.
Oh, sorry. Janice. I've been called a lot of things, so. So we have a letter now and, it's unfortunate that it has to come to a letter to say we're not willing to move forward with the contract beyond this year, because I think Orca's done a great job in the park. We've heard very few complaints. There seems to be order in the park, which I think a lot of the residents in that area have greatly appreciated. So now that we have a letter from the board, and I know that you're going to present a report back to council, hopefully in the near future. Would that include, as Councillor Boyko said, a request to council whether we want to renegotiate the existing contract, or are you going to look at alternatives other than Orca? What's your intent in the report?
I think we would look at what alternatives there were, what options we had, and evaluate those options, and then come back to council for you to consider that.
Well, so would one of those recommendations be to sit down and renegotiate an agreement? Or would you strictly be looking at alternatives?
I think I would have to wait until the report was done to provide you with that, information. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Yes.
final.
One more.
One more. Yeah, I think it's hugely important, as you know, you mentioned earlier, we have a huge capital outlay that we've committed to last year, which I had hoped we had moved on to this year, so we have more information on the existing contract and how it was working. Council didn't support that motion, and so now we're in a bit of this situation where we need assurances that the cash from this operations, the 50,000 in Parks Reserve, the reserve for the campground, and the payments, the interest payments on the 900,000 or 800 and something thousand that we're spending there, over there. So I would hope that a renegotiation would be an option as part of that report, but I understand that you want to review and look at all the other options, but I would hope that that would be part of one of the options. I think they've been a good provider.
For sure. And I think it's been a couple of transition years, so there's been some challenges. I think there definitely is opportunity there. I guess at this point in time, the board really doesn't see that. And for sure, when we assess it, we'll look at all the opportunities. I guess really if we're not sharing the revenue, though, there's more revenue for us. So I think we really do need to look at all the options.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, through you. Kind of feel the same about the situation that they do with the Chamber of Commerce closing down in Lakefield. It all came as a bit of a surprise out of nowhere. And I can see by my colleagues' comments and questions here, trying to understand how we ended up here. At the same time, I have two questions from my colleagues. Are you not on the board for Orca, and were you not privy to these closed sessions or the meetings and would have partaken in this?
I could answer that if you wish, through you, Mayor. Yes, I and Deputy Mayor Black are part of the Orca board, and we were involved in those discussions that were all in camera. And as a result of it being in camera, we can't discuss it, just like we can't discuss anything in camera here. We could ask questions, and I asked a number of questions about going almost $1 million in debt. And I remember saying, is this something that perhaps we could put off for a year while we see how things work out? I couldn't discuss what was happening in camera at Orca but I could urge council to please pause this because we should have more information. And so I hope that answers your question, Deputy Mayor Black.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, no, that's exactly, we can only say so much. And, you know, we are directors on the Orca board, and we're very disappointed that this has got to this point where we've actually had to force a letter because Orca was losing money in the last year. And of course, it's a class B or class 2 or whatever. And so that's not recoverable through taxation. It's recoverable through reserves on the Orca board. So it was going to be more and more challenging as the seasonal sites move to daily rentals. There's a loss of revenue in the park every year. And so it would only get worse moving forward. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
If I could, Madam Mayor, one more thing to add to my answer to Councillor Henry. When the Orca board was looking at this, and Deputy Mayor Black referred to it, there are different sources of revenue that Orca looks at. And one of the sources of revenue, called a category 2 revenue, says that they are it's discretionary. So for example, there is revenue from Beavermead because Orca runs Beavermead just like they run the campground in Lakefield, and the Lakefield campground. And so the Beavermead contract is very different than the Lakefield contract. We, for example, every year, as soon as it begins, Orca pays us $50,000 just right off the top. And then the revenues are determined as the summer goes on. Rather than $50,000, according to the Beavermead contract, they pay the city people $5,000. That's a big difference. And so the Orca board was looking at the Beavermead contract and the Lakefield contract and saying they are significantly different. They were looking at risk of actually losing money, because according to the compromise that was done when the decision was made that the Lakefield campground would continue as a campground, it said that the blue section, that is the section that is closest to the marsh along the margin of the marsh property, as people leave that, those trailers will not be replaced. They will turn into campsites for tenting. And the Orca looked at that and said, as that happens over the number of years, the revenue coming in will decrease, because people are not going to park a tent there in May and not take it out in October, and they're not going to pay winter fees to store their tents. So the revenue will be going down. So they were looking at all of that. And then they said, it looks like we may actually be losing money. If we lose money on the Lakefield campground, then we have to take money from the Beavermead campground to make up that loss. I'm trying to picture the reaction of the city Peterborough councillors on the Orca board when that was mentioned. So there was my answer to you then is that there was a lot that went into this decision over a lot of meetings. It wasn't made in an impulsive way at all.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, through. Thank you for the clarification and respecting the process on all sides.
Councillor Koulos.
Through you, just a clarification question. Sorry, right back up here. It notes specific, I'm not familiar with the agreement in depth, but it was noting 2 specific pieces saying, as per here, we're offering this termination. Are they missing anything? Like, are there other pieces of this process that we should be aware of, or is it a done deal just because of this letter?
Janice.
Yeah, so again, we would come back with a report. Certainly the references in the letter to the clauses in the agreement refer to termination clauses. So in accordance with the agreement, there was to be 1 year's notice given. So that hasn't been done. So we would just consider all of those things as part of our report back to council.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yes, just a moment. Back when we were negotiating an agreement to deal with the Lakeville campground, there were several options, and the council of the day chose Orca to manage the campground because they had previous experience at Beaver Mead and Warsaw Caves. And Orca was quite amenable to taking this on because they were looking for additional revenue as well. I believe in the agreement, it has the ability for Orca to increase fees as they saw fit. So if there were, whatever the charges were, they could increase their revenue if they chose. Is that so?
Yeah, so the fee portion in the agreement, Orca was responsible for creating the fee. So for sure there has some flexibility around how those fees were set. Again, and in terms of operations, Orca decided how the operations were going to go as well, or specific services. And I know that for instance, this year, there are some changes being made in terms of how some of the services are being provided that won't necessarily provide a lot of more revenue. There is a possibility for more revenue, but there definitely is less expense. So yeah, there's certainly things in there on the revenue side and on the expense side that provides the opportunity for Orca to influence, and maximize the operations for sure.
Right. Thank you. I feel a little bit out of sorts because the letter doesn't really speak to the real reasons as to why the contract has been terminated. Furthermore, I understand that there was no notice given to you, Janice. A letter just appeared at the counter. So I'm a little concerned about that because we are a major funder for Orca, and I feel that at least we should have received some kind of a phone call or a heads up that this was coming.
So again, as I explained earlier, I did have the phone call in November. I had a follow-up conversation mid-December. And my understanding was that it was going to go back to the board in January. And I didn't have a sense at that point that this was the letter we were going to get. But ultimately, that's what happened. The board made a decision, and yes.
Councilor Boyd.
If I could, thank you through you, Mayor Sennis. Yeah, I understand how council felt blindsided when they saw this, and that's why I asked the question of the reaction of staff in not informing council, because while council feels blindsided today, staff has known since November that something's up. Staff has known since December that Orca said, we wish to negotiate this contractor, we're going to have to terminate it. And the decision was made by staff, no, we're not even going to talk about negotiating it. So while we may feel blindsided today, the process has happened over the last number of months.
All right, Councilor Kula, sorry, just let
Yeah,
Janice.
and I just want it, that isn't, in terms of the discussions that I had with the CAO at Orca, I would not say that was the conclusion specifically that was drawn at the end of those conversations. There was to be further conversation with the board.
So she did not get a final outcome as to what the conversations with the board was. She got a letter. And I think that's wrong. Councillor Koulis.
I just want to, this is the first that we're getting in writing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, can we counter and say, please provide your year report or your year, they have a year, you said, to provide notice. And then we have more time to consider this. Because I just think procedurally, this has not been done properly. And it may feel like a surprise, but I'm sitting here being like, I just think if it was done procedurally, it wouldn't have been a surprise. Sorry, I'm going around in circles here. I'll land the plane. I'm just wondering if we can write back and say, and ask them for a formal year's notice with this letter for us to consider, just so there's more of a paper trail, because this is just this is pretty flimsy, in my opinion.
Janice.
This is the year's notice.
No, so I think in the agreement, it says if there's to be a termination, you can terminate at the end of one season, giving a year's notice. So you would terminate October 31st of 2024 or effective the end of the next season. So that's what's provided for in the agreement. I think to Councillor Coulis's point, that is something that we can speak to as part of the report that would come back to council.
All right, well, we've had a discussion on this, and the recommendation is there as part of the consent, so.
I would like, if I could, Mayor, to add an addendum or an amendment to the motion, if I could.
Saying,
Where it's, I can read from the beginning, that the correspondence from Orca advising their notice to terminate the operating agreement related to the Lakefield Campground effective October 31st, 2025 be received for information. All good. And the amendment comes here, and it goes to what Deputy Mayor Black was talking about with respect to options. I know staff talked about this, but it's not in the motion. Basically, what we're going to do is either we're going to renegotiate, we're going to look for another operator, or we're going to operate it ourselves. So, and that staff be directed to prepare a report detailing options. Add those two words, detailing options for council's consideration, outlining a proposal. Staff has said that's what they're going to do. I would just like to see it pointed in the motion. I don't want staff to come back and say, do this. I would like staff to come back with, say, here are detailed options that you can consider. So therefore, I'll say it again, that staff be directed to prepare a report detailing options for council's consideration and the rest. I would move that amendment.
right? All in favor? That's carried. So I need a motion to approve the things that had been pulled. I think, oh no, we're still working on, we're working on the OPP now.
Yeah, sorry, and this may be a very small question, and I guess it goes either to Lane or to Councillor Henry. But in the OPP minutes, it said that the Inspector Chris, and I'm going to mispronounce his name.
Galeazza.
Thank you. A guy named Boyko should know how to pronounce funny last names. It said he provided a verbal update on the OPP billing. What was the nature of that billing update? Did he say that he knew what was coming in the next little while, or the process is in place to deter? So what was his update on OPP billing, if you recall?
Thank you. Through you. Conversations were verbal at the time, one being the provincial election that's coming down, and the OPP billing that's coming up has not been confirmed as of yet for the coming year. There's definitely a number of members on the board, many from our neighboring communities, that are raising concerns about it.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure nothing's being put on paper as of yet. Definitely got a good feel of the room, as I'm pretty certain the province is getting a good feel from all the communities.
Right.
We will get a follow-up on that, but it won't be for a little while yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now I'll ask for the motion to receive all of the other things that weren't put in. Deputy Mayor Black, Councillor Henry, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. And we will now go to notice of motion for Councillor Boyko.
Blue circle is circling. Here it comes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I presented this motion, a notice of motion last meeting, and basically what I've looked at is a number of ways that we could program our arena. I know we were talking about ice time earlier, but as much as the arena time is packed in the evenings, we know that it is nearly empty most days. And so there is time for this. The family stick and puck, as it says in the background, is an increasingly popular recreational activity in our region across Canada. Simple Google search will show you that it is all over the place. It is not shinny. Although our insurer thinks that it is, doesn't involve hockey games. I had a conversation with my brother just last weekend who lives in Brighton. He takes his 5-year-old grandson out and does one of these at the local arena. Just takes a puck and they've got their helmets and their sticks, and he plays out and plays with his 5-year-old grandson. And there's a bunch of other grandparents and little kids playing out there. And I asked him, tell me about the waiver that you need to sign. And he looked at me as if I was from Mars. You just go out, it's like public skating. You don't sign a waiver for public skating. So anyway, so I'll go back again and say it's an increasingly popular recreational activity that a Google search will demonstrate is all over Canada. It's not shinny, it's not hockey. It is families and parents and kids and grandparents and kids. They bring stick and puck and they play around. They just learn to skate, they learn to shoot, they learn to pass. It promotes mental and physical health through exercise, family togetherness, and shared community activity. And it's offered during the day when rinks are now largely empty. I know that this is a little bit different than what we normally do, in that this would be us presenting a program rather than simply renting our ice, and the minor hockey associations or anybody else develops the program and oversees it and does all the things that are necessary. This will be slightly new. I say slightly new, not new, because we already offer public skating. So my motion that the Selwyn Township Parks and Recreation Department bring a report to council stating how it could organize and offer a family puck and stick program at the Lakefield Smith Community Center beginning in September 2025 as a pilot to test the feasibility of organizing and offering other programs to encourage community exercise and physical and mental health, while inviting families to more fully utilize public facilities in non-peak hours. How I see this working is we would simply market it, not by just putting it on our website, but by putting it in the Herald and by putting posters around the arena. And a staff member would be there to do, if, according to what Amy said when she was investigating this, if our insurer insists that we need people to sign up and sign a waiver, then we have a staff person that is there at the specified time that gets the waiver signed, collects the $5 or whatever the fee is, and does passive supervision like we do passive supervision for minor hockey. I don't see this as a huge amount of staff time that will be necessary, but I see it as possibly something that would bring benefit to our community. So therefore, I propose this motion.
Seconding.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a friendly amendment, if the mover and the seconder are willing. Firstly, the request for the report should be directed to staff, just as Councillor Koulis said, we shouldn't. And so going forward, when motions come, they should be directed to staff always, not to a certain department. And the other thing is a change to bring a report to council to consider the implementation of the family puck and stick program. I don't think we should be setting up an expectation for the community when we don't know if it's going to work. So we should be getting the report. And I think that this change to consider the implementation instead of stating how it could organize and offer. It's a small nuance, but are you willing to accept those two amendments? Mover and seconder.
I will certainly take the first one, and I understand that staff consider the implementation. I don't know. A colleague of mine who I have a great deal of respect for, we had a conversation. He called me, and we had a conversation about the Municipal Act, and it led me to go back and read the Municipal Act again, because I hadn't read it since considering running for office. And in the Municipal Act, it mentioned these are the responsibilities of council. And council directs staff. And council directs staff in a number of ways. And one of the ways that's specifically noted is with respect to programs offered by the municipality. So I see council saying that the staff shall bring a report stating how it could organize and offer, as opposed to you folks consider whether you want to or not. I see that as our directing staff, and that is our job according to the Municipal Act. So I will take the first one, that change it to staff. But I don't want to change the second one to consider the implementation. I want to say, you come back and you tell me how you can do it.
Councillor Coates.
I was gonna say this, but I'll go right into it. Your motion doesn't align with our previous decision-making, which you first and Deputy Mayor Rack second. So it's contradictive to section 3.1 of the township's role and service delivery model in the updated service plan. Recreation and sports programs in Selwyn are delivered by external providers, service clubs, community groups, volunteers. The township provides recreational service or spaces and supports user groups. Even though the township does not currently deliver programming, there is focus on ensuring there's choice of services available for all age groups. The township uses indirect service delivery model, where the community delivers the programming and the township provides the physical space. This delivery model is common in smaller and more rural municipalities, and there is a lower population density and a smaller population size. So the fact that you moved and seconded this at 1 hour, 30 minutes, 27 seconds on November 26, 2024, and we all supported it, this really goes against what we've already decided. So I'm hesitant, like when this came forward, I was very hesitant, and I'm open to having a discussion because I have a number of questions to provide context, and I'd like to do that, but I do not like the way that you're kind of out of order pushing at staff with your comments. And I think that we need to roll that back a bit. So I'll roll back my direct comments if you do too, please.
Quite understand, but I will respond if I could, Mayor. This is why that I said, because I'm fully aware of everything that you just referenced. And that's why I say, as a pilot, to test the feasibility of organizing an offering. So it is referring directly to that by saying this is a pilot to test the feasibility of organizing and offering programs.
I think that Councillor Koulis was commenting on your comments rather than your motion. Councillor Koulis, you had some questions.
Yeah. So again, like I originally, like when this first came forward, I didn't even know the allocation policy was going to come forward too. So it's just, I had all these questions. So I really want to know where this idea is coming from. Is this an individual? Is this a user group, or is this just your idea? Let's start there.
Where did this come from? It came from a person who talked to me about it. And then I did research, and then I looked at other municipalities and looked at the municipalities' websites and saw how these things were working. And I saw that there, again, I could list them all, but it's done in Peterborough, it's done in Millbrook, it's done in Brighton, it's done in all over the place. And you can look, and these are programs that are offered by the recreation departments, whatever they're called, because they're called different things, but by the parks and recreation departments in various municipalities, some big, some small. We're talking about Brighton, small municipality. We're talking about different municipality sizes, different configurations where something like this is offered. So like many things that when because I know all council members have conversations with members of the public, and many times members of the public come up with an idea and say, why don't you do this? I'll consider it and I won't bring it forward, or I will bring it forward. This is one where I thought, as I looked at it, this is a really good idea. This is something that I can get behind. This is something that I think is a good idea, but we can't do it because everything you just mentioned, because we don't do the programming. And I thought, well, according to the Municipal Act, council's job is to say we should do, it is our job to do this, something like this, not pocket stick, but you know what I mean? This is the way the process works according to the Municipal Act. So therefore, this answered your question, why don't we try this, which is a good idea, to see if maybe we should offer programming. And maybe we'll do this and we'll decide after a little while, like by Christmas, by the end of the season, no, we shouldn't do it. It's not this family stick and puck didn't work. Maybe we shouldn't do programming. It's testing that.
So the answer to your question was it was an individual.
Individual, okay. And to follow up, my reasoning for that question was because we've already been having questions and conversations with user groups, and we've been having the tensions with user groups. And now we have this other actor coming in, which may disrupt this whole program, whether it's us providing the programming or it's just somebody coming in with the idea. I can go through, I have a couple other questions that I think are directed to staff to answer. I'll just go through those quickly. So, I just want to clarify too, just like to, again, not scorched earth, but like, and from a basis, is there any other groups currently doing this programming at our arenas through standard rental arrangements? I have assumptions, but I would like to hear others.
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely. We have several groups and I have to make a comment because I think it was really misstated to I don't know why, but we are not empty. Even on a slow week in March, we have 18 hours of our 40 daytime hours full. If that's empty, then I'm not sure what to do. And again, that was last week, not March break. If I looked at March break, we're probably at closer to, and again, I'm only doing daytime because that's what this suggestion is. That gives us 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 40 hours. We're at 30 and a half hours this week. So I don't think we're empty. Do we have space for something like this? Yes, but I think that's a comment that had to be corrected. Are the other groups? Absolutely. We right now, it does vary year to year, but if we talk between the two arenas, we have hours used 7, different groups 5, 6 if we count the figure skating as a group that organizes, that registers, that make sure they have waivers, that so yeah, it's something that we do all the way through. And I don't think you can compare insurance for this and minor hockey because minor hockey gets all its own insurance. It doesn't, the township always has and any partnership has an exposure, but minor hockey, any of the major groups come with their own insurance. So this would be quite a change. I'm not saying that change isn't possible. I'm just saying it does change.
My other follow-up question would be, I know we need a report to provide this information, but we've been asking these kind of crystal ball questions all day, so why don't I? Who would this be tailored to if it's during the daytime?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm actually not sure. I think that's a very good question. It certainly was one of the things that popped to my mind as soon as I saw the motion. Homeschoolers, kids that are off sick, special family arrangements, or under the age of 4 would certainly be what I would think. Since we did have something similar suggested by a resident, it was all adult that they were talking about. They were actually looking at other programs that limit it to 45 and over. Our answer to that person after we did the research with our risk analysis and our insurer and other groups was we have very reasonable day rates, rent the ice and provide this program because at this time we don't do programming. Excuse me. It was one of the reasons why council in the day, I can't remember how many years ago, but it'd be within the time that the mayor has been here, put in a day rate that could encourage these sorts of things and was in support of senior men's hockey, senior ladies hockey, daytime hockey, those sorts of pickup activities because it wouldn't be too onerous on anyone trying to start things up. And let's be fair, it was filling time that was underutilized. We know we're at 100% of our prime time. We got to get this gravy and we got to get the shoulder hours full. We've done a great job of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with something that's going to get people active, keep families together, increase skills. Right now, I can name 5 hockey coaches that offer something like this in our township.
I have one last follow-up question. All the examples that were provided have an online software platform. So sorry to approaches. Can this be done without an online platform?
With our current one, sorry, so through you, Madam Mayor,
Sorry.
with our current one, no, our booking, doesn't, we have a very popular booking system with the smaller municipalities who do not offer programming. That is a whole other type. We don't have a lot of client and family information, but no, it's something that we would have to either buy a new system, do it pen and paper, or look at some sort of module on the existing system. But no, right now, we could not start this. We would have to make some change in some purchase if we were taking on the registrant role. So.
I'll just finish off with a comment saying, it seems like this is going to cost us when we already have a service approach in place. And I know we are having a number of clubs and just groups coming to us, not just for ice time, but other facility allocation time, assuming that we can do this for them. And in the past, we've turned them away saying, find a local business to sponsor you, do it yourself, because it's easier on staff in regards to time management, effectiveness, but also it takes, it brings those people into the fold, right? And that makes them also more reliable on having their volunteers coming through. At least that's been in my experience being part of different volunteer groups. So I'm sitting here thinking this is actually going to cost us more, even as a pilot. And so like, while I'm open to like having a report come back to us and stuff, my inkling is that this is just not, it just goes against our decision making and the approach that we've taken. And I just don't think it's I just think the timing's off, to be honest. Like maybe in a couple years, or maybe if we revisit this, if we do come in with an ice allocation policy, like I just think the timing is off for this.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. No, I support the recommendation for the report. The challenge with climate change is there's no outdoor ice anymore for kids just to go out and play shinny or skate around with a puck and shoot. And that's how, kids learn to play hockey, is they get that extra ice time. And we just don't have it anymore. I mean, the skating oval, I think, had 3 weeks of ice time this year, which was 2 weeks more than they had last year. So there isn't a lot of opportunities for that type of recreation outside anymore. So we have, as Mike says, there are hours in non-prime time that might be used for this purpose. With respect to risk, I do public skating in Lakeville on Saturdays, and I feel that's way more risky. My daughter was knocked down a couple of weeks ago with her 2.5-year-old in her arms, ended up falling into another older lady because it was kids playing tag and falling and sliding into people. So from a risk point of view, having adults out there and kids with helmets on and sticks and gloves, I don't know that it's any riskier than our public skating, which is a program that we run technically, even though the policy says we don't. That's one that we do collect money for and do those sorts of things. So, a stick and puck would not be any different than that. I know the insurers maybe say because there's a puck on the ice and sticks that it's riskier than public skating. Again, my experience is when there's a couple of 100 people on the ice in public skating, I'm always looking over my shoulder. And I'm wearing a helmet now. I didn't wear the helmet until that happened. I'm wearing a helmet for public skating. So, I think there's an opportunity there to consider it. Again, my experience with it is at the Millbrook Arena doing orientation for county council. I look out on the ice and there's 2 friends of mine out there. They do the program there. It was mostly adults. It was 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So I don't know how that program works, whether the municipality, they sign a waiver with the municipality and pay a yearly fee to be on the ice at that time. I don't know how that works. To me, that would be the simplest way to go. As Councillor Kula says, we can't have a lot of staff time involved in this, but if it's a registration online and a payment online and they just get some kind of a pass to show when they go on, I think that's fairly simple. We don't supervise public skating, as far as I can see. So there's no need to supervise it or overlook it. So I think there's an opportunity there. I'd like to hear back from staff how we might be able to make that happen, and what the rules around how we could make it happen, what they would be. So I'll leave it at that.
So the mover did not want to
If,
have the wording to consider. You said to consider and he said no. And I think that this is a U-turn from what this council approved in November or December of last year with regards to immigration services plan where we wouldn't get involved in programming. So the fact that you won't support the amendment to consider the.
if I could. I hate to interrupt, if I could.
You're doing it again.
I just
You're
wanted,
doing it again.
pardon me?
Point of order.
It's a point of.
Point of order.
So that means you're done.
No,
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, I just had my hand up because I wish to say that I've had time now because while I gave a notice of motion 2 weeks ago, this amendment was handed to me and I didn't have time to think about it, but now I have. Also, I have a great deal of respect for what Mary said, what Councillor Koulis has said. And I agree with much of what she said. So as a result of having time to think about the motion that was just put in front of me, and listening carefully to what Councillor Koulis said and respecting what she said, I will now support that that I would like to amend the motion, just as the mayor said, as a result of what Mary said and having time to think about it. So the motion I would like to present now is that staff bring a report to council to consider the implementation of a family puck and stick program and then the rest. So thank you for for this amended motion, and thank you, Mary, for what you said. The very important words. Thank you.
Second, the amended motion.
All right, well, I will call the vote if there's nothing more to be said here. All in favor? Okay. That's carried. Thank you. All right, we will now go to closed session. I need motion to go in close. Councillor Henry and Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor? That's carried. We'll meet in the other room.